Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, negotiations on the skids, with Iran getting an open invitation for President Trump to talk on the phone, and offers from Vladimir Putin to store their uranium, and analysis from David Brody about waning support for Israel from Democrats, plus Alan Dershowitz's break with the Democratic Party, and a glimpse into ancient Jericho, where Jewish culture once flourished. All this and more straight ahead on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Paul Petit.
And I'm Joshua Swanson.
Well, the on-again, off-again talks between Washington and Tehran are off again because of U.S. skepticism over Iran's latest offer to open the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Russia has now entered the talks, offering to Iran to store its uranium. Here's the latest on these and other stories.
President Donald Trump called off plans to send U.S. envoys to Pakistan for talks with Iran as negotiations break down. Speaking on Fox News, Trump underscored America's position.
Well, we have all the cards. If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us.
Today, Iran floated a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the conflict, while postponing nuclear negotiations to a later stage. U.S. officials rejected the plan, saying it could weaken Washington's leverage, particularly efforts to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. The administration signaled it intends to maintain the naval blockade, pressuring Iran's oil exports. Iran's president is demanding Washington lift the blockade before negotiations can resume, calling it a clear breach of the ceasefire understandings. Meanwhile, in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was shocked by the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, condemning political violence and expressing gratitude that the president and First Lady were unharmed. Turning to the north, Netanyahu reaffirmed his government's determination to confront Hezbollah.
In the last 2 weeks, we have eliminated 46 terrorists, and we will act with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, because we are not willing to accept this lawlessness.
At the same time, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid announced a new political alliance.
I am taking the most Zionist and most patriotic step we have ever taken for the sake of our country. This evening, we are uniting and establishing the Together Party under my leadership.
This alliance comes after their 2021 coalition ended a decade of rule by Netanyahu, with Bennett serving first as prime minister. Now their renewed partnership aims to challenge Netanyahu's leadership in the elections expected later this year. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Iran's foreign minister Monday, offering to store Iran's enriched uranium and bring an end to the war.
Iran and Russia are big strategic partners, that they have always supported us. We have always supported Russians.
In Washington, President Trump held a situation room meeting on Iran's latest proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz.
I will confirm the president has met with his national security team this morning.
President Trump is reportedly not happy with Iran's new proposal because it doesn't address their nuclear program. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Fox News that Iran's hardline leadership continues to be a stumbling block.
And so you see a tension, and you always have in that system, between the Iranians who understand, let's be hardliners, but let's also balance that with the need to run a country, and the hardliners who don't care and have this apocalyptic vision of the future.
While promising to advance peace talks with Lebanon, Israeli Defense Forces struck Hezbollah targets, citing ceasefire violations that killed an Israeli soldier Sunday. The IDF Chief of Staff also addressed growing criticism following the destruction of a crucifix by an Israeli soldier in Lebanon, calling the act rebellion against the army's values. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about Israel's important bond with Christianity while surrounding himself with Christian IDF soldiers.
They filled all the important positions in our incredible military, and they do incredible work. This is completely contrary to what is presented outside. It's not only that that Israel fights for the rights of Christians around the Middle East, but that Israel has Christian soldiers who fight for the defense of Israel and for our Christian brethren throughout the area, throughout the region, and beyond.
In recent years, the Democratic Party has grown much less supportive of Israel, and last week it reached a new low point. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody explains why.
This political shift inside the halls of Congress has seen Democrats in full reversal mode against the Jewish state. California Congressman Ro Khanna sums up the current sentiment.
We're a party that believes in two states and peace, but let me tell you what we're not for. We're not for aid to Israel. They've got a $45 billion defense budget. Why are we giving them money?
The tone on social media is even sharper, with New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posting, quote, "I will not support Congress sending more taxpayer dollars and military aid to a government that consistently ignores international law and U.S. law." Then last week came a seismic shift.
The yeas are 40, the nays 59. The motion is not agreed to.
In a Senate vote to limit weapons sales to Israel, a whopping 40 Democrats voted yes. In 3 straight years of voting on this issue, you could say the writing was on the wall. In 2024, 19 Democrats supported limiting arms to Israel. In 2025, that number grew to 24, and now this year, it reached 40. That's all but 7 Democrats, and includes Jewish senators who have called themselves pro-Israel, like Adam Schiff, Alyssa Slotkin, Ron Wyden, and John Ossoff. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania remains the lone voice in his party, calling out his own colleagues.
Why aren't you criticizing Iran? Why aren't you criticizing Hamas or Hezbollah or these other kinds of forces that, if you have to pick a side here, criticize that. So that's where we're at as a Democratic Party. And you're going to vote against the kinds of critical aid that Israel requires to beat back and destroy organizations like Hezbollah. Yeah, like I said, if you have to pick a side in a war, and clearly we have a side, and now I'm proud to stand on the side of Israel and America.
Polling suggests Fetterman is definitely in the minority, with a new survey showing 80% of Democrat voters now hold an unfavorable view of Israel. That's a 27-point jump from just 4 years ago. And when asked whether their sympathies are more with the Israelis or the Palestinians, 67% of Democrats sided with the Palestinians, just 17% supported Israel. A famed Harvard law professor and lifelong Democrat Alan Dershowitz is sounding a sharp warning, telling CBN News he believes the Democratic Party is headed for the waste bin of history. He blames its growing anti-Israel and at times anti-Semitic tone. Dershowitz says he's making the switch to the Republican Party. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody has the story. When an influential American liberal and prominent legal mind walks away from the Democrat Party, it will make waves. And Alan Dershowitz has done exactly that. A Democrat since age 14, the 87-year-old now says what drove him away.
I can't be associated with a party that's kind of leading the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, morphing into anti-Semitic campaign. Dershowitz told CBN News the breaking point has been building and really accelerated after the 2024 DNC convention, where he says the party provided a platform to anti-Israel voices, which led to hateful rhetoric in this year's key Senate races. The embrace of controversial figures like Hassan Piker has only made things worse.
Therefore, I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
I got banned completely from the New York Times, but now they're giving a platform to Hassan Piker because he's so close to Democrats. Rahm Emanuel, Bernie Sanders, all these people are now getting in bed with a Nazi, a real Nazi. I mean, not just a pseudo-Nazi, but somebody who might as well be wearing a swastika. Dershowitz is turning that frustration into action, saying in addition to leaving the party, he's actively working against it. I decided I had to devote all my energy to making sure the Democrats do not control the House, do not control the Senate, do not control the presidency, because that would all be bad for America, for Israel, for peace. As a Jew, he's also sick and tired of anti-Semitic tropes, like the accusations Israel somehow pulls the strings to influence President Trump in making decisions with Iran and the broader Middle East. First of all, why would Trump ever, from a political point of view, favor Israel. Favoring Israel doesn't get you votes these days. Certainly it doesn't get you crossover votes. What Trump is doing is based on principle, not politics. And he's certainly not being pushed around by Netanyahu. Any claim that Israel is pulling the strings or Israel is making the decisions for Trump is both stupid, ignorant, and bigoted.
For Dershowitz, though, this goes beyond politics. It's become personal. That's because the cost of speaking out has led to losing relationships and being shut out of institutions that once regularly welcomed him. He says temples and Jewish organizations won't even host him. Bookstores have stopped carrying his books. And here's where it gets interesting. Alan, do you think there are other prominent Democrats that you know of that privately feel how you feel but aren't saying anything publicly?
Oh, I know that for a fact. In fact, I probably got 20 phone calls and emails just when I wrote my op-ed for the Wall Street Journal saying, "You speak for me, thank you for saying it," but they don't want to say it. First of all, they're terrified about alienating their family members.
And it doesn't stop there. He believes the Democrats' shift against Israel and a move towards anti-Semitism could mean disaster for the party. How do you think history is going to judge the Democrat Party on this when it comes to Israel?
Horribly. The Democratic Party is today in the early stages of what have developed into really anti-Semitic parties like Britain's Labour Party early on and the Spanish Left Party.
Dershowitz believes this is a defining moment, not just for the party, but for America.
When you turn against Israel today, you're turning against America tomorrow, and that's been proved over time. And you're turning against Western values, Judeo-Christian values, and values of decency. So I think the Democratic Party is going into the waste bin of history.
And now Alan Dershowitz is writing a new chapter in his storied career. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Okay, we just saw those remarkable stories from David Brody, and in watching that, this is groundbreaking. We're talking a lifelong Democrat here, big supporter, and what I've seen parallels between he and Trump in this respect. We're familiar with Trump derangement syndrome. I'd vote for him, but I can't tell you, right? Being blamed for everything. I think we're now at a point where we have what's called IDS, Israel derangement syndrome. I mean, look what's happening to this gentleman.
Yeah, there's no question it's a lifelong Democrat, and to have so many Democrats line up against Israel, you have to point to public opinion. And public opinion, you have to connect the dots to where are they getting those opinions. It's social media. It's social media. The main battlefield is infecting people's opinions with not necessarily correct information. They are then infecting our politicians who are now turning against Israel. And I think the most compelling quote from that report was, you turn against Israel today, you're turning against America tomorrow.
Yep.
Right? And that coming from a Democrat, to your point.
From a Democrat. I was actually in the room when our bureau chief, Chris Mitchell, interviewed Alan Dershowitz last summer, and it was remarkable hearing him and talking with him afterwards. And he sees this as not a fight between political, as far as conservative and liberal, not between Democrat and Republican. He sees it as evil and good. Good and evil fight is what's going on here in Israel right now. He's very clear on that point.
Well, I think so, and I actually related back to the numbers, Paul, because if you just look at the data, it's not being represented properly, right? So this was 3.8 billion annually that we're giving in foreign aid to Israel. Mm-hmm. Now that's a 10-year deal, okay? It started in 2019, well before October 7th, and there's been an additional 16 billion that was allocated since then. Now, that 3.8 billion breaks down to 3.3 billion in foreign military financing. This is a loan so that Israel can buy weapons, munitions, and defense systems from the United States.
Mm-hmm. And again, we go back to social media, right? Because people are getting their cues, are watching the news, and they're seeing these, from AOC, $45 billion, and they're thinking, that's what actually we're giving them every single year. Right. No, not to mention the rest of the globe. And back to your earlier point, when it comes to that, public opinion, ultimately, regardless of political affiliation, they're fighting for their careers. And they're in a sway with public opinion, particularly the Democrats. They've been known to do this, and we're seeing that right now, where you have Jewish legislators that say we side with Israel, yet, like Tucker Carlson, I love Israel, but all their actions say otherwise.
That's exactly right. Well, and begs the question, maybe there is a spiritual component to this, Paul, right? This is the party that in 2012 at their convention they booed God. Okay? They've been on a course of destruction ever since then. Of course, they're pro-abortion, they're pro-the trans movement, DEI, all of it, you name it. And they think that they're really taking on Republicans or they're taking on the president, but it seems to me that they might have a much greater foe that they're taking on in the spiritual realm. Rebelling against God.
Rebellion against God, and again, Dershowitz said the fight that's going on here in the Middle East is good versus evil, and he also said, and he praised Christians. He said, he even called them in the interview that was done by Chris Mitchell. He said that Christianity, the prayers of evangelicals in the United States is even more powerful, and we know this personally, but more powerful than the Iron Dome. So you can see where his affiliation is, which immediately, based on what you just said, puts him against the majority of Democrats now in office in the United States.
Well, that's another lie going around right now that you just reported on, of course, is the concept of Christians being persecuted here in Israel, where they're actually when the truth is they're serving in the IDF. It's the only state that's growing. Yeah, it points back to social media. It points back to, and follow the trail of incorrect information, lies being generated, and a lot of that is driven by Qatar, China, Russia, so foreign actors trying to infect our political system with their agenda. People online believing that, then influencing their politicians, and now we see, to your point, Jewish politicians walking away from Israel.
Yeah, and again, 80% Democrats hold an unfavorable view towards Israel. 67% side with the Palestinians.
That says it all.
Who'd have thought?
I'm here in the southern city of Arad. CBN Israel is on the ground to provide aid and support to the people affected. An Iranian ballistic missile wreaked havoc in a residential area just 5 minutes from here, and we're here partnering with a local ministry to provide help to people that need it most. We're delivering food packages, connecting people to our community and support center to provide trauma therapy. We're also contacting an elderly couple that are deaf and they can't hear the sirens when they go off, and we're providing special alarms for them to be able to hear. This is what we do in times of crisis. We're here on the ground. It's thanks to you. Thanks to the support of CBN donors, we're here to provide support. I want to thank you for continuing to support the people of Israel, for your prayers and your donations. God bless you.
Long before modern cities and borders, an ancient priestly family called the Hasmoneans restored religious freedom and strengthened Jewish identity. They turned Jericho into a place of power, luxury, and politics.
I had a chance to visit the archaeological excavation at the Hasmonean Palace complex, where one of the most notable sites from the Second Temple period has been unearthed. Here's what we saw and heard. The Hasmoneans are remembered as a Jewish priestly family who led the revolt against Greek Seleucid rule, who outlawed the practice of Jewish traditions and desecrated the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Excavations in Jericho at the 1st century Hasmonean Palace complex uncovered one of the region's most impressive Second Temple period sites. Due to security reasons, it's not accessible year-round.
Only on holidays, Hanukkah, Passover, Sukkot, more or less that's it. 3 days each chance, and that's it. That's why you can see here a few hundred people, and in these days, because they're only the days you can come here to see the archaeology, our history, our tradition.
The Hasmoneans fought to restore Jewish worship, religious freedom, and devotion to the God of Israel. They eventually established an independent Jewish kingdom here 2,000 years before modern Israel. It's not hard to see the parallels between modern-day Israel and the Jewish state of 2,000 years ago. Both face challenges over maintaining sovereignty in a complex geopolitical environment, and both face concerns over maintaining security as well as safety. The fortified complex served as a palace as well as a defensive stronghold. Ruins show a city located in a strategic area. Discoveries also indicate city leaders were observing Jewish practices, which is exactly what they had fought for against the Greeks. The Hasmoneans and later Herod chose Jericho as a winter capital because its climate and commerce made it an important hub. So began the Hasmonean slide into assimilation. These remains show a lavish lifestyle with one foot in Greek culture and the other in traditional Jewish customs.
And you actually can see here a warm room with the baths. We actually really can take a bath inside. Over there, you can also see the hot room, the cold room, and one thing if here, not in any other bathhouse, there's a mikveh. So they actually make a kosher mikveh and take a good shower like the Greek king.
Herod the Great, who came to power under Roman authority in 37 BC, dramatically expanded the Jericho complex. The remains allow visitors to clearly see the shift from a Jewish monarchy to Roman-backed kingship, showing the evolution of Second Temple architecture and culture.
What Herod the Great built here is just unbelievable. He built one big palace, but it's built from both sides of the valley. Valley? We're in the middle of the desert. If you invited someone from Rome to your palaces from both sides of the river with a bridge in the middle, you can feel like you're in Rome.
These trenches from the Six-Day War in 1967 show how the issue of security has continued through the centuries. Located near the Jordan Valley, Jericho is close to key trade routes, which require protection from the empires who sought the destruction of the Jewish people. Today, Israel maintains its security and sovereignty while it flourishes. Fascinating stuff. And that is all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks so much for joining us.
Remember to follow us on social media. Please pray for wisdom for our leaders and for the best possible outcome for the people of Iran, of Lebanon, and all of the Middle East.
Also, keep praying for protection for Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Paul Petit. And for all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
Dat is meer dan de daden. Je temperament, je karakter. Of papa of mama echt van genade van God leven. En die vrijheid ook al ervaren, een beetje in het leven. Dat gaan je kinderen merken.
Ja.
Maar opnieuw, als dat zich beperkt tot alleen maar dit soort dingen. Ja. Die je zelfs als een keurslijf oplegt.
Ja.
Ja, dan ben je echt een bedreiging voor Gods genade. Ja.
We gaan met elkaar naar Genesis 38. Dit is een hoofdstuk over Juda. Jozef en Juda zijn gescheiden van elkaar voor 22 jaar. Het is wel eens goed om dit hoofdstuk te lezen, want wat zien we? Juda die de beslissing nam om Jozef te verkopen, scheidt zich vrijwillig af van zijn broers. Het was niet zo bij Jozef. Jozef ging niet vrijwillig naar Egypte, maar Juda wel. En hij kiest een vriend. Zijn vriend heet Hira, een Adulamiet. Het is heel belangrijk wie je kiest in je leven als je vriend. Juda koos Hira als zijn vriend, maar zijn vriend was een ongelovige. In Genesis hoofdstuk 38 vers 2 staat: Juda zag. Juda volgde zijn ogen. En dat is iets waar Abraham de knecht voor gewaarschuwd heeft. Je mag niet je ogen volgen bij het zoeken van een vrouw voor mijn zoon. Lot volgde ook zijn fysieke ogen. En wat zien we? Juda ziet met zijn ogen een vrouw, een niet-gelovige vrouw, een Adulamitische vrouw. Hij trouwt met haar en ze krijgen 3 zonen. De oudste zoon trouwt met Tamar. Maar er moet iets gedaan hebben wat de Heere ontzettend verdrietig maakt. Want de Heere doodt hem. Ja, het is goed om over na te denken. Er is in de Bijbel een zonde tot de dood. Wij weten niet waar die grens ligt. Maar het is wel goed om dat in de Bijbel te laten staan en er rekening mee te houden. Zodat wij ons niet verharden in onze zonde. Tamar is een jonge weduwe. Volgens de wet Deuteronomium 25 vers 5 is er de wet dat de broer dan zorgt voor de weduwe. Nou, die broer is Onan. Onan heeft wel seksuele relatie met Tamar, maar hij verspilt het zaad op de grond. Wel de lusten, maar niet de lasten. De Heere God is heel boos op Onan en ook Onan sterft. Dan is er nog één zoon over, Sela. Juda belooft Sela aan Tamar. Tamar moet jaren wachten totdat Sela volwassen is, maar Juda houdt zijn woord niet om de derde zoon aan Tamar te geven. Dan doet Tamar iets wat een lage beslissing is, maar wel te begrijpen. Tamar kent Juda. Ze weet, Juda heeft geen seksuele controle. Hij heeft geen zelfdiscipline. En ze verkleedt zich als een prostituee, ze gaat aan de weg zitten. Gedurende de tijd dat de schapen gescheerd worden. Een wilde tijd, een feestelijke tijd. En Juda ziet deze vrouw die beschikbaar is. En hij gaat in haar. Het plan van Tamar is gelukt. Het zaad van Juda is nu in haar. Zij vraagt 3 vingerdrukken, als het ware. Zijn zegel, zijn snoer en zijn staf. Hij geeft het. En gaat zijn weg. Later wordt het openbaar dat Tamar in verwachting is als gevolg van hoererij. Juda komt dat te horen en hij heeft zijn oordeel klaar. Ze moet verbrand worden. En dan komt Tamar met de zeehoorn, met het snoer en met de staf. Dat is het moment dat Juda tot bekering komt. Hij zegt, zij is rechtvaardiger dan ik. Ik had verbrand moeten worden. Vanaf dat moment is er bij Juda een totale verandering gekomen. Hij heeft ook nooit geen gemeenschap meer gehad met Tamar. In dit hoofdstuk zien wij dat de genade het altijd wint van de zonden. De 2 zonen van Tamar vinden wij zelfs in Mattheüs 1 vers 3 in het geslachtregister van de Heer Jezus. Ook Tamar wordt genoemd in het geslachtregister van de Heer Jezus. En wat Juda betreft, als wij de weg van Juda verder volgen, dan zien wij dat hij weer teruggegaan is naar zijn broers. Dat hij belangrijk geworden is bij zijn broers. Dat vader Jacob naar hem luistert als hij praat. Dat hij voor de familie uitgaat richting Egypte. Dat hij pleit bij Jozef voor Benjamin. Oh, wat een heerlijke geschiedenis van Gods genade. Want uit de stam van Juda zijn de koningen voortgekomen. En de Heer Jezus, hij is de leeuw uit de stam van Juda. Genesis 38 is voor mij een bemoediging. Hoe diep je ook gevallen bent door je verkeerde keuzes, door verkeerde vrienden. Er is altijd een moment dat je je kunt bekeren, dat je kunt stoppen met die weg. En dan kan de Heer je naar een hoogte brengen waar je nooit van gedroomd heeft. Dat is de geschiedenis van Juda. En Juda betekent aanbidding.